Ivy and Gecko acknowledges the traditional owners of country throughout Australia, and we pay our respects to elders past, present and future. Welcome to Hearts and Minds. Our podcast episodes feature conversations with highly accomplished mining executives and board directors. We'll explore critical themes relating to leadership impact, staff engagement and culture development. So tune in, enjoy the conversations and prepare to be inspired. I'm Alana Bray-White, the Managing Director of Ivy and Gecko, and this is our podcast, Hearts and Minds.
I think, and this will sound cliche, but leadership is, it's the how. So it's a behaviour. It's not a title. And I think the importance of leadership has evolved quite significantly. Certainly, even in my time, in HR and leadership coaching. And I do fundamentally believe that leadership now is about creating or cultivating the environment where work is performed and how work is performed, as opposed to giving direction and instruction. It is very much creating a system of work where the people who are doing the work are solving the problems and coming up with the solutions. And that is your role as a leader.
Our guest today is Emma Coulthard, the Executive General Manager of Human Resources of ASX-listed Liontown Resources. Emma has gained more than 20 years' experience as a HR generalist, including 10 years as a functional leader across the mining and construction industries. Liontown is a WA-based battery minerals company focused on the exploration, development and production of lithium to support the rapidly growing clean energy transition. The company's flagship asset is the Kathleen Valley lithium project. Located approximately 680 kilometres northeast of Perth, Kathleen Valley is recognised as a Tier 1 lithium project, known for its significant scale, high-grade spodumene resources, and a strong potential to become a leading supplier to the global battery and electric vehicle industries. Emma is a country Victorian and a die-hard Richmond Tigers supporter. Despite this, she offers some interesting and invaluable insights, including how to coach technically trained executives to become more engaging and influential by refining their active listening skills. Emma brings a fresh perspective on leadership in the mining industry. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did.
Emma Coulthard.
Yes.
Welcome to Hearts and Minds. How
Thanks
you been?
for having me. Pretty good.
That's good.
For 2025.
It's been a heck of a year, hasn't it, for depending on which commodity area you come from. I mean, certainly the gold industry is incredibly active in merger and acquisition activity at the moment. Lithium, I guess, in a different category. It's been a challenging few years. How are things going at Liontown?
Pretty good, all things considered. I think I, as someone working for Liontown, would be feeling a little more optimistic than most in the lithium industry. I think, like you said, it's been a pretty intense couple of years, but that has aligned perfectly with our development and ramp up. So we were in an incredibly fortunate position that we were in the early stages of ramp up, that we could pivot to respond to the market that many cannot and have not. So I suspect that I'm feeling a bit better about it than most.
Yeah, good. I mean, you have a very strong and reputable leadership team, both at the board level and at the executive level. So the calibre of your people, I understand, is excellent in the industry. And, lithium's got to bounce back in terms of demand for the commodity, and the price has to go up. It's just a matter of time. Emma, this podcast is all about inviting people like you at the executive level, but also at the director level, to share some of your experiences and insights about your approach to leadership and how it impacts stakeholder engagement and culture development within the mining industry. And the hope is that people who listen to this podcast or who watch it will be able to take some learnings and apply it to their own situation. So it's all about how do we help people to get more value from productive and collaborative relationships in the workplace. Before we go on to the themes of leadership and culture, tell us a little bit about you, your early years.
My early years. I'm a Victorian. Don't say that too
Right.
loud over here. So I grew up in Melbourne,
Yep.
in the outskirts of Melbourne on the east coast, right on the outskirts of the Yarra Valley. My mother's family started one of the first wineries in the Yarra Valley.
Well,
actually,
what was the name of the winery?
Mount Mary is the name. Still going. So yeah, most of my early years are centred around that. As kids or family, it provided this sort of central place of gathering and existence for us all. So we were very lucky.
So country Victoria?
Yes.
How far away from Melbourne?
At the moment, it would probably be just over an hour. So
okay.
yeah.
And siblings?
Older brother. I acquired a couple of stepsisters later in life also. But yeah, pretty incredible life, really.
Which footy team do you support?
Very, very good question. That's been an interesting journey. My father is a mad Collingwood supporter,
right,
and is still probably devastated that neither my brother or I are. And I followed in my brother's footsteps, and I am a Richmond supporter.
There you go.
And I lived in Richmond for a number of years before I moved here. Yeah.
And school, did you enjoy it?
I did, actually. I did enjoy school. I was very, very lucky in that. I was academically okay, reasonably good at sport. So I did have a pretty good existence at school, I've got to say.
And you went on to achieve a degree, I understand, in economics and human resources. What attracted you particularly to the HR discipline?
If I think, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew that I would be involved in commerce in some way, shape or form. As a young person, I had aspirations to be a lawyer. Didn't quite have the academic ability to get there, but I just always knew I'd be in commerce. I was really good at economics and legal business type subjects at school, so I thought I'd head down that path, but got there and pretty much found that the subjects that involved a lot of numbers were not for me, so that ruled out economics, accounting, finance in general, and the HR subjects just made a lot of sense. It just felt like it was all very common sense learning as opposed to theory. And
you entered the mining industry in 2011, so about almost 15 years ago. How do you compare the mining industry to the industries that you were in previously? Is the context very different from an HR perspective?
I think I would describe it, and certainly then it was like entering another universe, to be honest. I think
How so?
Being from the East Coast, the mining industry was this sort of elusive, unknown place that people went just to earn a lot of money, really, and then you'd, come back home and buy a house and off you'd go. But I think, an industry that is so big, so consuming of an entire, state really, was quite unexpected.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you're right. In WA, it's the dominant industry, isn't it? And, it's hard not to know somebody well who is not associated with the mining industry.
Yeah.
When you're not concentrating on your work, what do you do to relax?
Well, funnily enough, I've been trying to do a bit more of that lately after the couple of years we've had. Look, I'm pretty simple. I really enjoy just spending time with good people, good food, love cooking, love eating, love good wine, love hanging out with my dog. I live, I think, in one of the best places in the world, Leighton Beach in North Fremantle.
Fantastic.
And so
some really good dog beaches down that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What breed of dog do you have?
French bulldog.
There you go.
Yeah, she's pretty special.
They're cute.
Let's
talk about...
Not so smart.
Really?
They're very cute.
I've had, what have I had? I've had boxers and border terriers and Labradors. I'd say the boxer was probably the most affectionate but the dumbest. Very difficult to train. And the border terrier probably the smartest. Cunning dogs. But there's always been room for a dog in our household. Let's talk about leadership, because you are an executive level leader of people at Liontown Resources. What does leadership mean to you, and what are the most important qualities of effective leadership, do you think?
I think, and this will sound cliche, but leadership it's the how. So it's a behaviour. It's not a title. And I think the importance of leadership has evolved quite significantly. Certainly, even in my time, in HR and leadership coaching, and I do fundamentally believe that leadership now is about creating or cultivating the environment where work is performed and how work is performed, as opposed to giving direction and instruction. It is very much creating a system of work where the people who are doing the work are solving the problems and are coming up with the solutions. And that is your role as a leader.
Yeah, very good point, and I agree. Generations ago, it was all about command and control, wasn't it? Giving minute direction and instruction to staff. Now it's very much about providing an inspiration for people to collaborate together to achieve a common goal. And I think empowerment is a big part of that. Showing that you trust people and allow them to make or at least contribute towards important decisions that will affect the business. And also empathy and listening, I think, are very important qualities.
Absolutely. And I do think it has, certainly for me, I think we definitely went through that leadership phase of where the need to be, inspirational and motivational, and people needed to want to be able to give, to you, or to be able to give you their best as a leader. And I do think we've even shifted from there, where it's more than inspiring people, and it's probably a little bit more practical in my mind, that beyond inspiration, you do need to provide the scaffolding for people to work effectively and to work well and to be inspired.
There must be lots of challenges in your type of role. As we've explained, the mining industry can be quite a volatile environment to be involved with. Commodity prices fluctuate. It's a very cyclical industry. How do you maintain morale, and how do you maintain a healthy culture in a place like Liontown?
At the moment, with the volatility, honestly, I think we are doing that well with communication and transparency. I think ambiguity is one of the most dangerous, elements of a culture you can left unattended. And I think we are resolving it by trying to communicate very openly with our leaders and our people about what is happening in the industry, what is our take on it, how are we planning to respond. And it's a difficult balance with ASX listed companies, obviously, and what and when you can communicate, but there is a huge commitment to getting that information to people as soon as practical, and I think that is an incredibly effective tool.
How does that roll out in real time within your company? As you mentioned, you are a significant ASX company, so quarterly reportings and offering the market guidance is all part of being an ASX company. But at the coalface, so to speak, of your business, how do you sort of communicate to people? Do you have regular sort of face-to-face meetings or team meetings with various pockets of the business?
Yeah, look, I think it varies, and we've got, our typical communication channels and mechanisms, but you would appreciate, as would anyone in this industry, they don't always reach the bulk of the people who are doing the work. So we rely very heavily on, leadership cascade and allowing leaders to interpret it in a way that's going to be meaningful for their people. We have our senior leaders, Tony, our CEO, Adam, our COO, have just come recently back from a trip to site. They spent the weekend there to actually talk to people to see how is the information being received, what can we clarify, what else do you need to know. So I think we're fortunate that we're still of the size where we can be quite personable in that regard. It's not a luxury that every organisation has.
Yeah. What's the headcount of Liontown now?
Direct employees, we're sitting at about 310.
Okay.
Obviously, our underground mine operations is contracted out, but in terms of who we employ, just over 300.
We know that engagement leads to the application of discretionary effort, and once people...
My favourite topic, David.
Is it?
It is.
I bet. So once people start to do more than the minimum required in terms of effort and commitment, you know as well as I do, great things can happen in terms of, if you look at all of the metrics of a business, productivity, safety, profitability, ultimately, they all increase if people are really engaged. How do you cultivate that sense of engagement with your people?
I do think we overcomplicate it a little, and for me it is actually very simple. Is we know what drives engagement, and if you want to improve anything, the place you start is to measure its current state, and that is how you strengthen and improve engagement. It's quite a scientific measurement approach. Measure it.
How do you do that?
Find out. Well, use a reputable tool. Like I said, it's quite scientific now how we measure engagement. The drivers of engagement are very well established and known. Use a good tool, get good participation, measure it, and look for your opportunities to make change and do something differently. I think the biggest mistake we make as leaders and businesses is trying to do everything one, not measuring it and making assumptions about what's going to shift the dial, but two, trying to solve everything or improve every aspect of it at once. Measure it, look for your opportunities, and focus on a few but meaningful impact.
I think one of the challenges of the mining industry is that typically the more senior people have come from a technical background and education. They might be engineers or geos or whatever, and very often their skills in empathy and managing and developing relationships with other people is an area that they need to really work on as they ascend the hierarchy of leadership. So I observe that there's probably far too many managers and not enough leaders within organisations. How do you support and help your senior managers to become better at the relationship development area so that their people do become more engaged?
I think that measure of engagement and it being quite a scientific and data-driven tool is one of the most, significant levers that I have as a leadership coach and that we have, because it is data. So you talked about, the leaders or the managers who've got, in particularly mining, engineering, numbers backgrounds. They respond well to data and metrics and a measurement of leadership effectiveness that can be translated into a number. For them, I find is an incredibly powerful tool, and that you can take a measure that is a number. It might be around, communication or recognition or one of the areas of engagement, drivers of engagement, to be able to say to a leader, this is an action or a change in your leadership practice that will change that number, and that resonates with that type of leader. Yeah,
that's an interesting observation, and I can see how that would appeal to technically oriented and trained people. I'm very interested, Emma, on the value propositions that are pitched by companies, and we did quite a bit of research a couple of years ago, Alana and I, in our book Smart Value. We looked at a number of mining companies, and I'll pick one of them because it happened to be, at the time, ranked the employer of choice amongst senior candidates, and that was Evolution Mining. Now, Evolution Mining, we learned by talking with the chairman of the company, Jake Klein, and Laurie Conway, the CEO, that they have a number of EVPs, employer value propositions, and they pitch a particular value proposition at a certain segment of the candidate market. Having done their research, they know that what appeals to one group of people may not appeal to another group. So they curate a unique value proposition to target at a particular group of people. And it would appear that that's been pretty successful, not only in attracting the highest quality people from the mining industry, but keeping them over the longer term. Do you have a point of view on how you develop and communicate an employer value proposition?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's when you talk about EVP and employer of choice, I've got somewhat of a controversial view on that there is more to it than trying to be the employer of choice in that wanting everyone to work for you. It's about who you want to work for you. We don't want everyone to work for us. We want the people who are going to add value. Yes. That for me is a bit of a consideration in that. But most definitely, and I think the organisations that are treating EVP as a bespoke approach, I think it's smart. And I think we should have been doing that a long time ago. And we have the opportunity now to tap into different market segments better than we ever have before in terms of social media and the intel we can get on those various pockets. But absolutely, we have very specifically designed, campaigns that might target a particular diversity type of candidates. So we know what EVP means for those types of candidates. When we did our big, trade operator ramp up, we know what they're not interested in and what we would be wasting our time promoting. And we went very heavy on, this is what the camp looks like, this is the roster, these are the benefits. Whereas, that as part of your EVP is of insignificance to other groups.
Yeah. Once you've captured a list of candidates who appear to be suitable, certainly based on their experience and qualifications, how do you then hire for culture fit at Liontown?
I think that's a really good question, and I think if you want to hire for culture fit, I think the best thing you can do is to be very clear about how you describe your own culture. Effectively, there you're kind of establishing the baseline and the expectation, and that you can hire and select based on the individual's response to that description of your culture. I think is the most effective way that you can do that. It's more of and I think it is less about, selecting or trying to find people who can convince you that they will fit in to the culture that you describe, or certainly the culture you are describing that you want to get to. Less about fitting in and more about what would you contribute to it, how do you add to it, what value do you add? Because I think you want to fall into that trap of, in order to be culturally of value to us, you need to be exactly the same. It's more about how do you add to this culture in the way we have described it. Yeah.
I'd like to talk a little bit about diversity and equity or fairness and inclusion, and the reason
Still a
why
hot topic,
is
David.
It's a huge topic and close to my heart, and I'm a bit worried because I do see some serious signals from certain parts of the world, including the US, where a lot of the DEI legislation and operational practices are being wound back. There has been a review of the effectiveness of DEI practices and their value, and it seems to me that they're being diluted. That concerns me. Do you have a point of view on whether that will happen here in Australia, and whether the anti-woke movement, as it's called, will infiltrate Australian industry and dilute diversity?
I do have a view, which primarily starts with, fortunately, I think we're a little smarter than those individuals you described. So I don't have a concern that it will be, diluted. I do have a concern, independent of that shift or transition, that we think the problem has been solved. It was International Women's Day not that long ago, and in my address to the organisation, may have been a little heavy, but was responding to some, queries about why are we still talking about this? Like, why have we still got, diversity stats in our performance scorecard? Like, why do we still having this, International Women's Day? And so I talked about and tried to translate it into something that people could resonate with, as far as, the treatment of women in society, not just the workplace, what that was not that many years ago, and some examples of occupations where women just actually weren't allowed to do that. And it was in, my lifetime, and talked about how you can't just at a point in time go, all right, from now on everything is the same and therefore we've fixed the problem. That when you have a group of people that have experienced adversity for an extended period of time, the impact of that adversity takes a very long time to close. And the example I gave was, you think about, the example was, did you know that as a woman, you are far more likely to be seriously injured in a car accident in 2025 than if you were a male? People are like, oh, why? I said, well, because the safety standards that you have to comply to put a vehicle on the road in this country in 2025 are based on the average size of a male. Because when we first started producing cars, women weren't allowed to drive, so it didn't matter. But that standard in 2025 is still in place. And so translate that to the workplace. The adversity from 50 years ago, even 100 years ago, the impact is very much still here. We have a long way to go to unwind the damage, if you like, and it's not making things the same from a certain point doesn't solve that. So that is my concern, is that we think that equality has solved for all of those.
Yeah, it's continuous improvement,
damage.
Isn't it? And we have made good progress, and there's still a lot of progress to make, for sure. From a people and culture perspective, what most concerns you about the current state of the mining industry, and what do we need to do to improve it?
Honestly, I think the biggest concern at the moment is the topic of psychosocial hazards and psychological injury and the relationship with the workplace and its, responsibility for and management of psychological illness, injury, etc. I think and particularly for mining, because we have such a high safety culture embedded, therefore regulation, we will take action and do A, B, C, D. I think we are still very unclear about what the role of the workplace is in contributing to psychological illness, injury, and how to manage it.
The language you use is really interesting to me. I mean, I'm of an age where when you say the word safety, you immediately, or I do, think of physical safety. And I have to sort of encourage myself to go the next step and think, well, safety is much more than just your physical well-being. It is psychological and social safety and belonging within a company. The mining industry, I suppose, over the last 5 or 6 years or so has undergone a lot of scrutiny, hasn't it?
Absolutely, rightfully so.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a big government report in that time frame that really put the spotlight on particularly some of the big miners and their FIFO work style, and the challenges that women face. And again, we are making progress, but there's still a long way to go, isn't there?
Yeah, most definitely. And I guess, my concern is not that it's, that it's becoming a focus. It's our understanding of it and how we manage it in a reasonable way, and how we understand the relationship and the responsibility of the workplace in the extent to which the workplace can reasonably be expected to contribute to psychological, it's not black and white like many safety-based initiatives and concerns are. It's not. and to try and fit it into that infrastructure, I think is very dangerous. And I think we've got a lot of understanding to do.
Another problem that I'm concerned with in the industry is the shortage of people, both at the skilled labour level as well as the professional level. We know that the tertiary institutions are simply not producing enough engineers or geos or metallurgists to satisfy the demand of mining companies. And we know from people like Jim Walker, chair of the WA State Training Board, that tradespeople are simply not there in the numbers that they need to be for us to continue to develop the mines of the future. So does that mean, Emma, given the shortage of people going through the system, does the mining industry have an image problem? Why are younger people not flooding into the TAFEs and the universities to come out as mining professionals?
My view is, and I know in your book you talk a bit to, the changing needs of the worker and the up and coming workforce and what they want and what they value, and it is changing. I think what attracted people to the mining industry, so FIFO, being away from home, long days, long swings, big money, but the new and younger workforce, that's not what they prioritise the most. They have different views of what success looks like, and the mining industry will need to respond, or we will run out of good people. They will choose industries and occupations that will deliver them what success looks like for that generation of workers. And it's not, being away from home for weeks at a time and working 12, 14-hour days.
Yeah. And the stress that places on the family. I mean, you just look at the relative divorce rates of FIFO workers versus the rest of the population, and it takes a huge toll on your family being a FIFO worker.
Yep.
And now we take a short break to acknowledge our sponsors.
This episode is brought to you by Halo Civil Engineering. Halo is a multidiscipline civil contractor that specialises in the delivery of complex civil projects across defence, infrastructure, energy and resources. A West Australian company committed to delivering dynamic solutions with a focus on zero harm, while having a positive impact on their industry, clients and the people they serve. For more information, search for Halo Civil Engineering on socials or visit halocivil.com.
Is your business ready to amplify its voice? At Podwave Studios, we offer professional video podcast production services that help you connect with clients, build your brand and grow your audience. From corporate messaging to thought leadership, we've got you covered. Book your session at podwavestudios.au today.
As the only executive search and leadership consulting firm to be admitted membership of the Minerals Council of Australia, Ivy & Gecko is uniquely resourced to advocate for the interests of our exploration, project development and mining clients.
AI is an area that fascinates me, Emma. The way that AI is impacting all industries, but increasingly the mining industry, what do you regard as some of the key risks and benefits associated with implementing artificial intelligence into the mining industry?
Look, I can't talk to it from a technical mine operations perspective because that is well outside of my sphere of understanding and expertise. But I guess I can talk to it from, the work world I live in, which is around, people management and effective people management, is that it's becoming, increasingly more difficult to, identify authentic contributions and conversations even. If you think about, we communicate so much now, email, messenger, text, etc. And when you've got something else other than the human designing that communication, communication now looks very, very different.
Yes, it does. I mean, I'm not a technical expert, obviously, either. But autonomous trucks, autonomous trains, robotics is very much here now, and you just do wonder where it's going to go to and the implications and ramifications that has on people who may not be able to adjust to doing different types of work. So clearly a lot of benefits in terms of productivity and safety, but some downside also in terms of displacement of workers who may not have the agility to adapt.
Yeah, I do fundamentally believe that as far as the technology will go, it is still based on the experience and knowledge and expertise of a human, and that as far as it will advance, there will always be a place for those humans that have the inherent knowledge and expertise.
Yeah.
In order for that, intelligence to be successful.
Yeah.
I think there'll still be a place.
It's your turn. Do you have a question for me?
Well, I do. So what podcast number is this for you?
17.
David? Number 17. So 17 leaders.
Correct. At board and executive level.
What has stood out for you? You ask a lot about, you talked about, the intent being that we can share our lessons.
Yep.
What has jumped out at you as being a lesson where you've gone, wow, every leader needs to know about that?
A few things, I think. It's a very good question. I haven't been asked it before. As I think back of the people that I have had these conversations with, one stands out in particular, Cheryl Edwards, chairman of Westgold Resources. A lady well into her 70s. She described her background, and this is one thing that I've always been fascinated with when you learn about the early upbringing of certain people. Cheryl left school at the age of 15. She became, in her words, a checkout chick at Woolworths in Chewett Hill. In her early 20s, she did her leaving certificate in order to gain entrance to university, and she did a law degree there, and she became the first woman treasurer of a state government under Richard Court, and subsequently she's been on a number of ASX listed boards, including being the chairman of 3 of them, I believe. So therein is a story for me of very humble beginnings, a woman with enormous humility and transparency, who doesn't mind showing her vulnerabilities as well. Really decent woman. Now, that's really stood out to me in the 17 or so conversations I've had, just how somebody can come from a very humble background to a very, very respected major ASX company leader. I think also I've noticed amongst the various conversations, as you would expect, I suppose, a diversity of approaches to leadership. There are some relatively old school people who are a bit more authoritarian in their approach, and they tend to be the men, I have to say. If I think and reflect on the women that I've had these conversations with, they tend to be more about empowerment of people. It'll be interesting to see if that trend continues as we progress in this podcast. But endless fascination for the backgrounds of people, how they've reached their level of leadership, and a lot of the lessons learned, I believe, for our listeners and our viewers, is the importance of listening and empathy. I've said before on a previous podcast that a lot of people have not mastered the art of listening. And Stephen Covey, in his book, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Leaders, one of the lessons is that you must first seek to understand and then to be understood. And I think too many people listen with the intent to give a response. They don't listen with the intent to understand the alternative point of view. And if I have a single lesson, I think of for leaders, it's learn how to listen, because so much of a trust-based relationship with someone is based on listening and empathising with them. Okay, word association game, Emma.
Hit me.
In 1 or 2 words, give me a response. An English monarch as Australia's head of state.
Prehistoric.
Taylor Swift,
Very smart.
Elon Musk,
Very dangerous.
nuclear power generation in Australia,
Has potential.
the likelihood of the Richmond Tigers winning a premiership this decade,
80%.
the prospect of the ALP forming a majority government after this Saturday's election,
51%.
the likelihood of Australia achieving its target of 82% renewable electricity generation by 2030, given that we're about 23% there at the moment.
Unlikely.
I'd agree with that.
I think stretch target would be my two-word response. Stretch target.
When you think about people who've shown great leadership in whatever field, who do you most admire?
Given that football has been a little bit of a topic today, Damien Hardwick, who was the most recent coach of the Richmond Football Club, has always stood out to me as someone who nailed what effective leadership is in the current decade, in that I believe he recognised that physical performance was this such a small amount of what success looks like and what a successful team looks like. And he recognised that ability to connect with people, connect them to each other, and how to leverage diversity of capability, of background, of culture, of everything, that he understood that, and he was able to bring it together and achieve incredible success.
That's an interesting choice. And when you do look at elite athletes of whatever code or whatever sport, once they reach the threshold level of natural ability to get there, it is a psychological and mental game, isn't it? Getting those 1% marginal gains to become the world's best or the country's best. It is very much a matter of psychology.
Absolutely. And I think that element you talked about earlier around, that a good leader, now people need to trust that you care about them, that he instilled that very early, and it enabled him to achieve what would otherwise, I think, be unachievable.
Tony Kiernan, the chairman of Genesis Minerals, said another football coach passed, Kevin Sheedy.
Yeah.
What's the best career or business advice you've been given?
Probably quite recently, actually, if I think about the last time I asked for some, as opposed to it was just given to me, when I had come out of a fairly intense workload period and trying to establish some more balance, but also be able to deliver better outcomes. And the advice was very much be selective or be very clear around the things that need to be perfect in terms of like my leadership, my outputs, the work that I actually spend my own time on. Identify the things that must be perfect and allow yourself to spend time on those, but be comfortable to let everything be okay.
Have you been a bit of a perfectionist?
Yep. Yep. And that was quite, I thought that was particularly coming from that particular leader. Very powerful for me to almost have that, permission that, mistakes are okay in the right place. Yeah. So be clear on where you cannot make mistakes and get that right, but accept that it's okay for everything else to not be perfect.
Good advice. What's an unpopular opinion that you have?
I think in the HR world, what is sometimes an unpopular opinion is I do fundamentally believe that everything we do in HR as far as initiatives, change, action, must be able to be translated into a commercial outcome. Or else why are we doing it? And it comes to my belief around the power of engagement and what that can actually do in a commercial lens. And so I do believe that everything on the HR agenda, you must be able to translate that into commercial value, or you shouldn't be doing it.
That's an interesting perspective and a very pragmatic one. And I can understand how some would find fault with that. But you're a pragmatist. What have you changed your mind about recently?
I would say I've probably had a bit of a shift recently around remote work.
Yep.
I think coming from my previous organisation where teams were dispersed, geographically more often than not. So, working remotely and, solving problems and executing work via video, email was fairly practical. And I have always been a very heavy advocate for people can be very effective working from home, from, the other side of the world, wherever that might be. And I definitely think I have changed my mind about just how effective teams can be when they are physically together more often.
Yeah. I think it very much depends on a number of factors: the size of the organisation, the context, the nature of the industry.
Yeah.
People in my industry, I guess, knowledge workers, consultants, in very small boutique businesses, it makes sense to work from home.
Yes.
Obviously, to meet face to face and via Teams as often as necessary. But I often think it's the most important thing is a meeting of the minds and not necessarily a meeting of the bodies. But I do observe a trend over the last couple of years towards CEOs and MDs wanting their staff to migrate back to the office for longer periods of time. But it is quite a controversial topic, and certainly when we did our research a couple of years ago now, we found that amongst the candidate population there was a strong preference for at least 3 days a week working from home for those people in a corporate setting, that is.
Yeah. And again, I think it does depend, like you said, on the type of work that you do. And I think, again, that comes down to the role of the leader is to provide that, infrastructure for this is the type of work that is effective to be done remotely from home, wherever. Yep. But this is the type of work where we all need to be here and to structure the way your team operates to fit into that and to get the most out of it.
Final question, Emma. Knowing what you now know, what advice would you give your younger self to help you lead a better quality life?
The two words that stand out for me is better quality. And I think that's probably where my answer would go, is to really think about what is better for you, and that better is not perfect. Better is just better. And my other advice would be, to my younger self, is that everything is temporary. Everything is temporary. Failure, pain, suffering, heartache, it is all temporary, and it will pass. Don't be afraid of it. Don't fear it. Be comfortable with it because it is temporary. And then on the other hand, so is success and joy, and all of the good things are also temporary. So sit with those two and appreciate what they are also.
Yeah, and I think related to that is working out what's really important to you. And someone pointed out to me recently that virtually nothing in the world is certain, and that opens up endless possibilities for possibility, and using your curiosity and your natural talents to be able to explore and find good in yourself and good in the world. Emma, it's been really good talking with you.
Likewise.
Thanks for coming along, and
Thanks for having
all
me.
the very best with your project at Liontown, and hopefully a better commodity price soon, and look forward to hearing more good news from Liontown.
I think you will. Thank you.
Thanks to you, and thanks for Ben at Podwave Studios for making this episode happen. Talk to you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to Hearts and Minds. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave us a rating or share it with a friend. And don't forget to follow us and connect on social media for updates on all of our upcoming guests. I'm Alana Bray-White, and I look forward to you joining us for our next episode.